So now that we know how to get input from a Windows Form program, let's try and extend this to figure out how to do it in a console program. A console program is actually pretty much the exact same code as it is inside of Windows Form program for reading in the stuff and dealing with strings that come in and converting them as we need to, as needed. But we're going to use a different command. In this case, we don't have any text boxes or anything like that. We still have to prompt the user and do everything like we normally would, but we have to do everything in text form, and it has to be one at a time. So in a Windows Form program, the user types in like all 4 pieces of information, and then they click submit, and then we can read in all 4 pieces at once, store them, manipulate them, and spit out the result. In a console program, we can't do that. Everything has to happen linearly, in order. So we ask for a piece of data, we read the piece of data. We ask for the next piece of data, we read that piece of data. We ask for the next piece of data, we read that piece of data. It's much more labor intensive, but it still follows the same basic logic. Read it in and store it. But after, of course, you ask for it. So the command we're going to use is a command that you've already seen before. We're going to use the command, let's catch up, Console.ReadLine. Now, we've been using this the whole time to kind of make our program wait and sit. So wait for the user to hit enter before it actually ends, because if we don't put this in, as you've seen in the past, the program will just run and disappear. Nothing will make it stop. So essentially what we've been doing is we've actually been getting input from the user. We've just been ignoring it. We haven't been storing it. So if we actually run this program, it does nothing but wait. We know that it's waiting for input because we have this flashing cursor here. Now I could type as much as I want. It doesn't really make a difference, and as soon as I hit enter, the program's going to stop. It doesn't care what I typed because I didn't store it anywhere. All I'm doing is reading in the data and ending the program. So what we're going to do this time is we're actually going to store what the user types in. So I'm just going to make a quick little program that asks the user for their age, and we're going to read it in and do the exact same process as before. We're going to store it, multiply it by 2, and then spit out the result. Simple. So the first thing I need to do is prompt the user. Console.WriteLine. It's the only way to prompt. It's the only form of text output we know for consoles. I'm going to say, please enter your age. We always need to be user-friendly. What does user-friendly mean? Well, essentially user-friendly means that the output is polite, it's concise, and it gets there's no wasted space. So short and concise is the important part, but it should always be clear. The user should never be guessing what they need to do next. So once I've prompted the user, I can actually start reading in the data. But of course, I need a variable to store that data. So up here, under the class line, I'm going to create a variable to store my data, static string user info. And I also need an integer to store the converted result, static int, let's say, user age. Nothing too special here. So the first thing I do is I'm going to read in that user's info. So user info equals console.readLine. You'll notice that nothing goes in the brackets. Nothing has changed here. The readline command is still exactly the same. The only difference is we're actually going to store the data that the user types in, and we do this using the assignment operator, because this console.readLine actually returns back to the programmer exactly what the user typed in. If the user just typed enter, it would return back an empty string, quote, quote, nothing inside. However, if they did type something and we store it, we actually have that data now. So now that I have the data stored in user info, I can convert it. So I could say user age is equal to convert dot to int 32 user info. And now we have that information. What we can do from there is we can now manipulate it. We can now change the value of user age. So user age equals user age times 2. Now again, this is just an empty line of code that really has no purpose other than the fact to show you that we can process and manipulate the information. And then finally we're going to do our O part of our IPSO model, or IPO, input processing storage and output. So at this point, just a simple console.WriteLine, console.WriteLine. Now in a console, we don't need to convert anything to a string to do the write line. It can actually handle numbers just fine. So I can just type in user age and it worked just fine. Now I run my program. And it's please enter your age. Okay, 17. And it immediately returns 34. And it's still waiting on that final line because I still have that final console.readLine at the very end waiting. And the reason why I have that is so you can actually see the black screen and rather than it disappear. So if I actually took that away, you'll see the difference. Run this. Again, please enter your age, 17. It popped the 34 up, but then immediately it's gone. So that's not very useful. So we're going to put that back in there. Now in the previous demo we showed how we could actually combine a few of these lines to get rid of extra stuff, and the way we do this is that we understand the fact that the user info is not anything more than a temporary storage container that we don't actually need. We can combine a few of the steps and remove that requirement in the whole first place. So what we're actually going to do here is, rather than say user info equals console.readLine and then convert the user info into an integer, we're going to combine these two steps. So we're going to take this console.readLine right here. We're going to cut it, or copy it rather. And instead of putting user info here, we're actually going to put console.readLine. So we can actually get rid of this one now. Oops, got to get rid of that extra semicolon. And we can actually run this, but I'm going to get rid of this user info line too because I don't need that anymore. Now let's look at this because there is a lot of stuff going on in this one line of code. So what is all going on? So you got to remember that it's going to evaluate the inside of the brackets first. So what I see is the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to read a line. So it's going to read whatever the user types in. Once the user's finished and they hit enter, it's then going to attempt to convert whatever they typed into an integer. Once it's converted it's then going to assign that converted value into user age, which then we now have the ability to now manipulate and process that information. So again, we'll run the program and we should end up with the exact same results. Please enter your age, 17, and we should get 34, and we do. So that is console.readLine.